leader, Ms. Stacy Hawkins Adams.
Thank you, Daphne. I'm just glad she's still my friend after I served her frozen key lime pie. And my son can cook, so I'm okay, I'm safe. Wow. All I can say is wow, wow, wow to the wonderful women at my table. We've already thanked Robert. But the stories you've heard, like I said earlier, I hope that it has given you the courage to reflect on your own journey, to think about how to overcome the fear, to look in the mirror and learn how to love yourself, to realize that we are each other's keeper, all of those wonderful things. And I say that to bring us to this moment where I have to remind you all and myself, as I've had to do throughout this year, that our stories are constantly and always being written. And that whatever season we're in is a season where it's being written. So I'm going to share some things with you, so I need you all to participate as I get to a certain part of it. But I will start by being honest with you and letting you know, as Beth said, we planned this event. We had our first conversation in the summer of 2021. It was August 2021. Still, the pandemic is still kind of going on, and she and the executive director, we were trying to plan when we would do this. And so, just like seemingly the rest of America, because this is my homecoming weekend at Jackson State and a few other colleges, October 22nd, 2022. That's a good date. And we thought we'd be past the pandemic. So this is how we landed on this date. And so I began planning with my co-organizers in September of 2021. Danica and Tawana, thank you ladies for joining me in that. And we've been planning for over a year. My vision had been to stand with you on this stage at this moment and tell you all what many of you all have been asking me for about 6 years now. I was going to be able to tell you that I had finished the book, and I had a title, and I had a cover to show you, and we were going to all stand and cheer. That's what Stacy had planned. But our stories are still being written, right? And so that is not what this season gave me. This is my birthday of this year, mid-January 2022, at one of my favorite restaurants. I was dining with friends, had great visions for what this year was going to hold. About a week before this, I had a wonderful conversation with an editor for a publishing house in New York that I was very excited to work with. And I got off the call with her, I told her about the book that's in progress, I am writing, told her what the plot was, what the theme was, my estimated time of finishing it was going to be March of 2022. And once we finished that call, I called my agent, he was excited, we talked about the possibilities. I looked at my calendar, I told Charvette Mitchell I couldn't edit this year's book that she was working on, and I pulled back from some other obligations because I was gonna go into the writing cave and focus on this book and finish the manuscript by March 2021, at least the ugly first draft. You have many revisions, but I was gonna get that ugly first draft done. But then life happened. So I'm gonna share with you all what happened, but you all have to promise to remember this phrase. Stacy is okay. Repeat it with me.
Stacy is okay.
So when we leave here today and you share any part of my story, you're going to say what?
Stacy is okay.
Very good. Because a week after my birthday, I started to have headaches. And I had a headache every single day from January until May of this year. And I do mean every single day. So on January 16th or 17th, I started to have the headaches. And I went to see my doctor. And on January 31st of this year, I received a diagnosis that I had a pituitary tumor. Yes, that is a brain tumor. And my doctor said to me, you will likely have to have surgery to have this tumor removed. And so life came to a halt. Mind you, I'm still dealing with the headaches. And now I have this somewhat shocking diagnosis. And along with the headaches came quite a bit of fatigue. And I will say the blessing in this is, first of all, wonderful doctors. Because I stand here now, months later, with 3 neurosurgeons, 2 neurologists, an endocrinologist, my primary care doctor, and an ophthalmologist that are very good friends of mine. I've gotten to know them very well this year, and they've done an excellent job of helping me manage my care. But I will also say to you that they're from all 4 hospital systems in the city. So guess who had to be the quarterback of the team? Me. I had to advocate for myself and make sure that everybody was talking to each other, that I was making sure that the recommendation they were given was going to be perfect for me and my 4'11" body and my mindset. So that was one blessing. The other blessing is that the headaches, for the most part, were low grade. And to me, that means they were a level of 2 or 3. So I could work most days. And so I would go to work, and I would come home, and I would rest. And I would go to work, and I would come home, and I would rest. And finally, I got to the point, thankfully, about a month into the diagnosis, where they determined that I was not going to have the surgery. And so, thank you. And with that, we were just trying to figure out, okay, is the tumor doing anything? Is it causing the headaches? What's causing the headaches? So I wasn't able to write, because you can't sit in front of a computer and write. I did it during the work day. I couldn't do it after work and sit in front of a computer and write all day. But what I was able to do was to make the decision that, as our friend Brianna said, sometimes your purpose calls you to things that are greater than you, and I knew that I still wanted to have this event. And so I said, well, if I'm gonna have a little bit of energy in between the headaches, I'm gonna move forward with planning this event. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this was because on my birthday, I had my whole year planned. I knew I was gonna have this book done, I was gonna stand here with all this fabulous news. And what I learned during the season, when I could not write, when I had to give in to the headaches, when I sat on my sofa, sometimes in tears, or laid in my bed and rested like my body needed, what I learned was sometimes we have to surrender to the season. We have to surrender to the season that life calls us to. And as one of my spiritual leaders told me, this was my season of holy pause. And in addition to learning to pause and rest in the season, I learned so many other beautiful things. I learned that we're not what we do. Because I've been a writer since I was 5 years old. And for me to not be able to write, whether it was to finish the book or a blog post or some days a social media post, I had to shift my identity. So my identity was not what I did. My identity and my purpose is who I'm called to be. I'm called to be an encourager. I'm called to be a truth teller. I'm called to be authentic in all ways. And that was something I could still do even as I walked through this difficult season. So if any of you follow me on social media, you'll see that I posted pictures between January and May. They were all very authentic. Those were the days I was feeling good. I even did some TikTok reels. Those were the days I was feeling good. But in between those days, that's where the rest came in, and the visits to the doctors and the medicine. The other thing I've learned, which is also something I want to share with you, is that sometimes we don't know what's going on with other people, and we have to grant them grace to walk through their seasons as they need to. I have many friends in this room who are hearing this for the very first time, and they might be like, why didn't she tell me? Why, I would have been there for her. By me not telling you, you actually were there for me. Because sometimes when people are walking through a difficult season, they just need to show up as themselves. If I came to your birthday party, or had a conversation with you, or went to a meal with you, or whatever we did, and if I didn't bring it up, you were giving me the opportunity to just be Stacy on that day. And I thank you for that. But I also thank the small group, including my beautiful children, who walked through this season with me, who were my prayer partners through this season with me, who sometimes I couldn't send an email or make a Facebook post or reach out to my writers group or whatever was going on. I did have a small band that I leaned on. And sometimes they didn't understand why I couldn't talk through it, because it was my holy pause. I needed to experience it. I needed to see what life's lessons were supposed to be teaching me through this season. And the third thing I want you to think about, which also goes back to what I was saying about those Facebook pictures and all the fabulosity you might have seen, that's very real too. Because you have to ask yourself, how do I want my story to be written? What do I want my story to be? This picture was taken from one of my sweet nephew's wedding about a month and a half ago, about 6 weeks ago. And I was trying to show up as the fabulous auntie. But in that picture, I actually have a headache at a level of a 5 that evening. But you know what? I still danced the night away because it was my nephew's wedding and I wanted to make an active choice to celebrate and be in a space of joy with him. And so when you're going through those seasons, think about how you get through those seasons. How do you decide your story, how do you want that story to be written? On the night of my diagnosis, January 31st, 2022, amid my tears, amid the shock, I pulled out my phone and I opened my Apple iTunes and I created a playlist called Overcomer. And every song that I could think of that would empower me, I put it on there. And in the mornings, I listened to my Overcomer playlist. And at bedtime, I listened to my Overcomer playlist. And if I needed it throughout the day, I played that playlist. So whatever you need to do to get through your season, you do that to get through your season. And I will say that everybody's season is different. Thankfully, I stand here before you where the doctors have determined that I don't need the surgery, as I mentioned. I have what's called a non-functioning pituitary tumor, which means that we're just gonna watch it and hopefully it'll stay silent and mind its own business. And those 2 neurologists have gotten me on some medicine that I can function on. I don't have a headache today. That's great, right? And so there's hope and sight that maybe we'll get to the point where I won't have the headaches. And in the meantime, I'm writing again. I'm halfway finished with this book. But whatever your season is, I will say, in a room of 150 people, October happens to be Pituitary Awareness Month. That's how I know God has a sense of humor. Because when I started researching this surgery that I thought I was going to have back in early February, at that point, I stumbled upon it. I was like, oh, he knows I'm hosting this brunch, and he wants me to talk about Pituitary Awareness Month? Well, okay. So 1 in 10 people around the world have pituitary tumors. So in a room of 150 people, 14 other people in here probably have one. You may have had or be about to have surgery. You may be treating it with medicine, or you may never know because it can be non-functioning and not bother you. The headaches led them to discover mine, but the headaches also helped me to discover this season of surrender, the season of holy pause, the season of realizing that we are not what we do, but who we're called to be. The season of realizing that we have to be our own quarterback of our own team. And the season of realizing that our stories are always being written, constantly being written. And as they're being written, we can live it out with joy. We can dance sometimes through the pain, but it's okay to practice the self-care and rest when you need to also. And I want to leave you with this poem, and I'll say I'm not a poet like Robert. He got up here. I made him memorize this, y'all. So he was mad at me yesterday when he saw that I had notes. But I'm not a poet. But early in December of 2021, one morning I got up, a typical time frame to work on my novel, and this poem poured out of me a whole month before the diagnosis. And I want to share this because I don't think it's just a poem for me. I think it's a poem for all of you all. I'm going to recite it for you. She swayed, she pirouetted, she arched, she leaned, she bowed. She was all things to all people and had been forever, without pause, without reason, without question. And then came the plague. It stalled and eventually stopped her perpetual performances and curtain calls. It silenced her deafening busyness. It killed people she knew or knew of, and many she had never met. It choked her already submerged hopes and dreams. It splintered her heart until one day she woke up and decided to pivot and discover what this season of darkness could teach her. She chose to flow with the unwelcome wind rather than resist it, to stare into the chasm of fear rather than shield her eyes. She arched, she leaned, she bowed. She broke open and taught herself a new way to dance. With the truth, through the pain, around the obstacles, she watched others show up for others and slow down for themselves. And she scraped together enough mindfulness and curiosity about what could be to do the same. She pivoted towards something daring, vulnerability, humble strength, and wholeness, toward being seen in her blackness and in her womanhood, and in her richness of heritage. She pivoted toward greater hope and deeper love and courageous letting go, softened by tender goodbyes. She pivoted toward the mirror day after day after day, speaking with clarity and with compassion into the tentative eyes staring back at her, and consistently declared, I see you, I will honor you. She pivoted and she conquered, and out of those initially commonplace, comfortable, and monotonous dances arose a fresh vision and an imaginative routine that is still unfolding and beckoning her into unchoreographed spaces. She continues to heal, reclaim her hope and her time, and embrace a looming season that brims with promise. A new pair of shoes and a reborn sense of self are empowering her to keep dancing, growing, pivoting. She is me, she is you, she is we who are overcoming.
Beautiful.
Thank you. I invite you all to remember, Stacy is okay. Keep dancing and keep pivoting.